Good evening to everybody who's here tonight at the Rockport Select Board meeting, Monday, August 13th. We're going to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. First, I'd like to express our wishes to our colleague Jeff Hamilton, who I think is at home tonight watching us on TV, recovering from a little procedure he had, so all of us send our best to Jeffrey. Public hearing, there are none this evening. We need to approve some minutes, meetings, and announcements. First one, Linda, I'd like to bring to your attention is Monday, June 25th, 2018, page 6. There's still this line in here that says the Opera House and Recreation Committees are left. The Opera House Committee doesn't need a liaison, as there are 2 staff members on that committee, and they can bring any updates or issues to the board. That was my statement, but it's not what I intended. What I want is they should have a liaison, but just right now, we don't have the manpower to do it. So in the meantime, we'll rely on the staff to communicate with us.
Do you want her to change the whole item, or are you just happy with having that clarified?
Well, I just want that paragraph clarified.
Okay, so you want her to change the whole paragraph then?
I just read the paragraph. Yeah, it's just, to say that, we're going to get him a liaison member, but just right now, we don't have the manpower to fill it out. Other people have comments?
On the same section, actually, it said, "I will give up the zoning board appeals." And actually, what I said was, I will give it up if somebody else wants it, and I don't know that anybody else stepped up to take it. So I still consider that I'm the liaison to that committee, I think, unless anybody here wants to jump up and down and grab it, so.
Okay.
I was making it available to any others who might want it, but I consider that I'm still the liaison for that, so as long as that's known, I'm fine.
Okay.
And as far as that goes, I think I'm the backup to Ken on the ordinance review committee. I don't know if we want to designate that or not. I don't think that you really assigned anybody to the comprehensive plan committee yet. I thought that was going to be done at the goals workshop. Under Deborah?
Yeah, aren't there 2 or 3 of them that are still empty?
Yeah, actually, economic development committee is in play, comprehensive plan
Right.
committee was in play.
Right, and those were, I think both you and Jeff expressed interest in those, and so.
Or
sort
at
of-
least comprehensive plan, I think Jeff and I both
Yes,
expressed
right.
interest. I expressed interest in the economic development, but I think you had deferred it to the goals workshop.
Okay, but these are the minutes, and did the minutes reflect our discussion?
The minute, what I just said was what our discussion was. I asked, I expressed interest in both of those, and you deferred them to the goals workshop, those 2.
I think the need to set up comment on economic development committee probably covers what your concern is, the comp planning committee. I personally don't recall the discussion.
Yeah, there was an expression by Jeff and I both of interest in you recommending that we address it at the goals workshop, but whatever.
Okay, well, I certainly anticipate both you and he will be on that comprehensive plan
Okay,
review
I mean,
committee, so.
it's,
Okay,
I wonder if we, at our next meeting, maybe we should have an agenda item just to review the.
Review the
liaisons again,
liaison
just to make
list.
Sure, maybe we can find somebody to plug into the ones where we're lacking at this point, too.
or I thought we were gonna do that at the goals workshop too, plugging in.
well, we could do that at the goals workshop, that's coming up soon enough.
I
Okay.
thought that's
All
what
right,
you
well, let's
said.
do that then.
Your call.
Okay. All right, so,
Otherwise, unless anybody else has anything on these, I was gonna make a motion to accept these minutes.
anybody else? Okay,
So I move to accept the minutes of Monday, June 25th, 2018, as presented and modified.
A second.
any more discussion? All in favor? Votes unanimous. Upcoming select board meetings, I
We
just.
got more
Yep.
minutes.
Oh, I thought we were taking them all as a
No.
pop. Okay, you're just doing one at a time.
Oh, I
Okay.
just made the motion for the one.
All right, I'm sorry. We'll go ahead then.
I don't have any issues with any of the other ones. Some of them, some of us weren't here for, so some we have to abstain on some of them.
Oh.
But I'll move that we accept the minutes of Monday, July 9th as presented.
Second.
I comment?
Yes.
I was not, I abstained from, there's a section in those minutes that say that, that Jeff moved to accept the resignations of Deborah Hall from the Ad hoc Technology Committee, and I abstained from that. It shows that I voted in favor of it.
Okay. You keeping up with us, Linda?
I am.
Okay.
That's the only change I had.
Okay, all in favor of that change? Getting unanimous? Okay, Thursday, July 12th, which was the executive session.
I move to accept the minutes from Thursday, July 12th as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Again, 4-0. And finally, the Monday, July 23rd, which was the workshop that we had following the non-voting taxpayer to select Phi as our building representative. Do we have a motion to accept?
I was absent, so,
I was as well.
Okay.
well, there's a change right there.
Right, that's my change.
Yes.
Move to accept Monday, July 23rd's meeting of the Select Board.
Not sure we can do that.
Yeah, you won't.
Well, there's
don't
only
have
two of
enough
us,
of a
so.
vote.
Two of you here.
So that has to go on next month's agenda.
With that suggested change?
Yes,
But
with
I
that
was not
suggested change,
present.
correct.
Make it quicker next month.
Okay, announcement of upcoming Select Board meeting. This is a little bit complicated, this public hearing and special town meeting on Monday, August 27th at 7 PM. I believe that at the end of tonight's Select Board meeting, we're actually going to have 3 issues that are going to require a public hearing. But only the special town meeting to vote on the TIFT amendment, if that comes to that tonight after the discussion. So the public hearing portions of the issues are going to start at 7, and we'll make it as far as we can with those. And then at 7:30, we'll close the public hearings and open the special town meeting, 7:30, and have the vote. And then after the vote, if there's further public hearing on some of the issues we'll be talking about here tonight, we'll continue after that. So that is that. The other thing I wanted to point out was the Rockport Business Owner Select Board Forum, Tuesday, October 30th. This again is a new workshop or forum that the Select Board is going to be trying, just simply where people who own businesses in Rockport can come and meet the Select Board, ask questions, and just get to know each other a little bit better. So I want to draw special attention to that, October 30th, 6 PM. In front of you, you also have your committee openings. We'll go to agenda changes. I was going to table item G, approval of municipal vehicle operation policy, because Deborah would like to do a little bit more buffing of it to make it cleaner. So we'd put that off until next month, but if the board agrees.
I agree.
We're gonna have a lot of stuff coming up. I would just as soon take it up now, but
Well, there are some substantive, non-controversial, I think, but substantive changes that I suggested at our workshop, and the staff simply didn't put them in. They were inadvertently overlooked. They are things like, you might recall, the enforcement and responsibility for review sections are written as subsections of
Right.
anti-idling.
I
You know.
saw the email.
I
that,
sent, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are changes that really have to be made, so unless we make them as we go tonight, but they're non-controversial,
Right,
but they
they're
really,
They're not,
mean,
you're saying
when-
they're not substantive changes, they're formatting changes.
well, they're formatting and they're,
They're just in the wrong place.
it's not completely that. There's a couple of others, but they're non-controversial, I
Yeah,
think. I
right.
mean,
I think the risk to our time would be well worth putting it off for the month and just, when it comes, have it be really clean and pop right through it.
Well, I guess my question would be, how come they weren't done prior to tonight's meeting? Because they've been in a while,
Yeah.
so we should have been able to have that and do it tonight. I mean, I'm not saying you,
Right.
Deb, I'm
Yep.
saying.
Yeah,
It has been provided to those that can make the changes.
Right, we received the agenda, as you know, on Friday, at the end of the day, and I reviewed the agenda over the weekend, and I sent an email with those items that were not made, those changes that were not made on Sunday, because I spent my Sunday, as you guys do too, going through the agenda. And I suggested that, you know, if we wanted to, I think that Rick did not see that email,
No, I didn't see
perhaps.
that email.
Otherwise, we might have had a cleaned up
Yeah, no,
version in
and that's
front of
fine. I'm
us.
just trying to limit our load as we go
Yeah,
down
that's
a
the
busy
reason I
fall.
sent it on Sunday with the hope that maybe we would actually have a cleaned up one
No,
before
I
us
didn't
tonight.
get, the only one I got from you on Sunday was the one about being a policy wonk.
Okay. So we will go ahead and move that to next month, and hopefully it'll go through fairly quickly. Next is opportunity for public comment. I believe Paul Charbonneau is here to make a comment. So Paul, if you would step up to the microphone, state your name and where you live.
I did have one for change consideration because of
I'm sorry, Paul, could you just have a seat for a
the
minute?
people that were here to represent C and D, I'm led to believe have family responsibilities probably long before they ever get to.
Represent who?
C
Sorry.
and G, C and D rather, sorry.
Oh,
And there's one more, the pathways one.
I mean, those people are here to talk about it, and I know that there's a family consideration that will come into play that won't allow them to be here too late in the evening.
okay. Well, they're pretty close to the
Yeah.
beginning
Yep,
there
that's-
anyway.
I've just thrown it out there.
Okay. Paul, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that you would have plenty of things to talk about in the future.
Good.
During this past summer's heat wave, and as in past summers, I live on Pascal Avenue, by the way, we have had to keep our windows closed to get some relief from the constant thumping and sounds of amplified music coming from the Marine Park. Please realize also that after the music stops, there are often boisterous behaviors and loud voices as people walk along Pascal's Avenue to get back to their cars. Whatever the income to the town, what is the added cost to the village taxpayers? The cost of sacrificing the quiet enjoyment of their heavily taxed homes can be onerous. I don't feel it's simply a question of one person's party is another person's disruption. The question is pretty straightforward in my view. To what extent do Rockporters want, or did they ever intend, the Marine Park to become an events venue? And to accommodate what, and whom, and why? By the way, the Camden Amphitheater is available for wedding ceremonies only, not for receptions. Loud music or alcohol are not allowed. The question is, who gets priority consideration and for what reason? An unintended consequence is to make no allowances for people in their homes. Some are elderly, some are grieving, some are sick, and other people simply want to read a book or watch TV. Disturbing the peace usually brings law enforcement. I know these feelings are shared by others. My sense is that we expect local government to take the initiative, prioritize the basics, and uphold that wonderful phrase, the quiet enjoyment of our homes. Is there room for compromise on this issue? Probably. But I ask you to reflect and act on that campaign promise to enhance the quality of life for Rockporters. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Could, is what we charge for the use of the harbor in line with others? Are we lower or higher?
What I'm going to do is add this to next month's agenda
There you go.
when we have some data. I already have some early data on this, and I think it's time we probably
Yep.
reviewed it, so
I don't disagree.
it'll be next month, so,
There's 3 things on there, so go light next time.
yeah, I know. Well, we'll go back to twice a month.
For 5-hour meetings.
Town managers report. Again, last time, it got a little bit hectic with all the questions. So the first thing I would like to do is ask this group, do you have any specific questions about the report that Rick wrote down for us and that's available? And if we don't have any questions about that, then we can go to the quiz the town manager, where we can
I
ask
don't see
him
where that says
whatever we
quiz
want.
town manager report.
It's all
in the
part of, it's all part of the
Town manager
the same
report
thing.
section.
I've
So
got-
first, let's talk about the current report.
I have questions about the current report.
There you go.
Okay.
This is the second time in probably 4 months that there has been nothing written about the police department and its activities. Is there a reason for that?
No, I just,
You just didn't do it.
It just
I mean,
didn't
everybody
do it.
else got a fair amount of ink.
I
I'm
know.
just trying to think.
Yeah, no, not intentional,
Probably means things are going well.
yeah,
Well, I mean, things are going well in other departments too, but we've got 2 pages of a lot that.
right.
So the other thing is, the streetlights. You talk about a much smaller number. What is a much smaller number
I think we're down to, I think, 8 or 9 at this point,
from the
the
20?
last time we checked
Yeah.
from,
And you know,
23.
you did see the Nina Junes is
it's
still
still
out
out. What I did get
for
from
about a
them.
year.
Well, no, they were working on it. That's the funny
Right.
thing. I saw them 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So at least they were there
From
now.
what from what I understand, there were several lights that are really old fixtures, so that they don't keep a lot of the fixture parts in stock. So they got up there, realized that they don't have the part, so they had to order it, so the parts have been ordered and it's on their list to repair as soon as the parts come in.
And my last thing goes back a little bit, but I suppose it's more towards Doug, has the letter to the school been written yet?
The band director?
Right,
Yes,
it has been, okay.
yes, I did that 6 weeks ago.
All right. Must have skipped my attention, thank you.
Okay.
Done.
I would like to, under the safety portion of the report, I'd like to do a special shout out to Diane Hamilton, our executive assistant to Rick. She's done a huge amount of work getting the town started on its SHAPE certification. And I certainly don't know all the details, but I do know that as we move through this, it's going to result in perhaps $36,000 reduction in our insurance workers' comp type policy. So I want to give her credit for doing a lot of work with different departments, doing the education that needed to be done. So very remarkable job on her part.
And she's been leading up a lot of these safety meetings as well.
Yep.
On various different topics, and she organizes them all and gets everybody there. She does an excellent job with it, so I second the sentiment.
And the SHAPE certification, the town office had their inspection done, the library had their inspection done, and the police department had their inspection done. So all of those inspections are done with some minor changes in each, some minor fixes in each department. And they'll be back, as I said in my report, they're back in 74 days, and they'll do a final inspection, and then we'll get our SHAPE certification for those departments, and then move. I think the next department is the harbor, and then Public Works.
Public Works, as I recall, was the one that had a lot of work to do.
Yep.
Doug?
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment that it's incredible. We've got this note here from Rick that Jamie Miller has announced his retirement, has worked for the town for 29 years. It's fantastic, and, you know, I think that we need to give him our thanks and recognition for that. The other thing I wanted to say, though, in connection with that, is that as new elected select board members, we go around and meet with the department heads and Rick. And I did that in the last couple of weeks. And Rick, thank you very much for spending the time to do that, and to the department heads. And I was really struck by the incredible dedication that we have in this town by our employees. Public Works, for example, and that's not to just single out Public Works, but just as an example, they've got people who bring their own tools, they bring their own, what do you call that, front loader or whatever.
Mower, his mower.
His mower, I don't know what it is, a piece of equipment he brings to work for the, and uses it for the town business. I mean, it's just, it's incredible the amount of dedication that these employees have. And having lived here for 19 and a half years, I had no idea, but I'm so impressed.
Good, well, thank you. One other question I have for you on the harbor is that, can you give us an update on, we have a fisherman who has an oversized boat in the harbor, and the town passed an ordinance change for special exceptions.
Right.
So can you give us an update of where that process is now?
To my knowledge, that is working its way through the Harbor Committee, because it's supposed to go to the Harbor Committee first for them to make a recommendation, and the Harbor Committee hasn't met, I don't think. Are you still a liaison for that? No.
That's Jeff.
Jeff is. The Harbor Committee hasn't met, but as soon as, the next thing on their agenda, next time they meet, is to come up, to make a recommendation to the board, either to approve the exception or not approve it.
Okay, and then the board will make the decision.
The board makes the
The way
decision.
the ordinance is written, yeah.
Okay. Okay, anyone else have any just quiz the manager questions? Okay. We don't have any unfinished business, so then we'll move on to committee applications. Tom Laurent has applied for the Board of Assessment Review, and his information is in the packet. You might remember he also, he's our, what do they call it? The
Oh, what, you just,
Board alternate.
Planning Board alternate, so now he'd like to also be on the Board of Assessment Review. He could not be here tonight. He was here last month for the discussion, so I'll entertain a motion.
I move we accept Thomas Laurent's application for position of the Board of Assessment Review. I don't think is there a
Is there a
deadline?
term?
Term to expire June 30th, 2021.
Term
That's
to
what you said,
expire
right,
June
Mark?
30th, 2021.
And I'll second the motion.
Perfect.
All right, is there any further discussion?
Just that he was in here last month, and he had a lot of expertise in the
Yes.
assessment review
Yes.
area, so I'm
He's an
really
assessor,
happy
I
that he's
think. Yeah.
applied for this board, because I think he'll add a lot to that board.
Lucky to have him.
Three good people that came.
All righty, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous, 4-0. Now, we need to have consideration to hold a special town meeting for a revision of the Commercial Street TIF district on August 27th, and this is the meeting that I referred to earlier. Tonight, we have Bill Napower here, who functions as our consultant in planning, and he's just going to say a few words about what will be required of us.
yeah,
Yeah,
Brief, Bill.
briefly. In fact, don't sit down, just,
What did you say, don't sit down?
yeah, we,
Very briefly, the TIF amendment proposes to change three things. One is to allow the TIF, which was for a 20-year period, to extend 30 years to 30 years, which would mean, what, a 12-year addition to the existing TIF. That's number one. Number two, it's to include in the development plan the last sewer extension project for Route 1. So the development plan or work plan specifically says we're going to, the engineering, design, and construction of the sewer will be part of the plan, so we can use TIF funds for that. And then the last and third thing is that we've included a few additional properties in that portion of the Route 1 corridor where the sewer will go, to include them into the TIF district. And the thinking was that over that additional period, if some development goes there, we would be able to capture that value, and that would go into the TIF fund. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's the existing Commercial Street TIF with those changes to allow the last phase of the sewer project to go through.
One clarification on what you said, I think it will extend it 10 years.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
it'll expire 12,
Yeah.
it has 2 years to go right now.
that's right, that's correct, yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
done a good job to this point of helping us pay for the sewer extension as it was originally built from, I'm trying to remember, almost from Route 90 down, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And we used it for part of the last extension we did out Rockport Steel area, so.
And we have done the survey work on the extension length, and we've also done
Some borings, yeah, so the additional engineering would be the final,
Right.
final portion of that. And that would be the actual design and allow us to hone in the price. I mean, we've guesstimated right now $4 million. That was an estimate from the engineer, but that contains a fairly large contingency. So once they finish the engineering, we'll have a better indication of what the actual price would be.
Okay. You know, the whole TIF issue is a fairly complicated one, and I certainly am not an expert on this. I've been trying to educate myself a bit, but, you know, at this point, I'm perfectly willing to rely on the experts around me, Bill and Rick, and certainly Ken, who's been through this before, to support this concept. I think it is important for the town, and I think it is something we should move ahead with.
And we're still within the cap.
Oh, yeah, we've met, there's certain parameters or boundaries in terms of the geographic area and also the value, and we're well under that. So, yeah.
How many, I didn't count the particular properties, but how many of them, between the beginning and the end, will be frontal properties to it that will be charged a fee?
Mark, do you mean the properties that we included in addition to the?
Well, up and down Route 1. I
Oh, up
assume
and
if
down.
it goes by, it will be like,
Yeah, all those properties will incur
Yeah.
a
Oh,
service
yeah,
charge.
everybody
Right.
goes by.
yeah, is there any idea, I mean, will it be the same as the one that people are currently paying now?
I don't know.
Higher or less?
Yeah, I actually, to be honest with you, I didn't calculate the number, but all those frontal properties would.
Well, that's what I was wondering, what type of revenue will come in?
Yeah, we haven't, you know, at this point, we haven't really calculated that out yet. We're still working kind of like big picture
Well,
looking
I guess,
down.
you know, one of the things that I saw in there somewhere when I was reading it, that there would be no additional expense to taxpayers because there's money already there, but yet there will be an expense for those that aren't hooking up to it. So
Yeah, there is, right now, I think that number is,
it's 86 or something, it's
I
a,
think it's like $24 a quarter, I can't remember off the top of my head, or $42,
Yeah.
it's less than $200 a year.
no, I just,
Yeah.
as long as,
And that number will get as adjusted as we develop
Yep.
the wastewater budget. And I wouldn't anticipate that it would change wildly one way or the other,
And
so.
one thing to keep in mind is that once the town meeting, if you have the town meeting approves it, it's not approving a bond that would come at a later, that's
Later date.
another action at
Yeah.
a later date. This action only allows us to extend it, change the parameters, and then also a key piece is it allows us to use the money that we're accumulating now. We're accumulating money into that TIF, allows us to use that money for the engineering that will get us into a better, a more solid number for estimating purposes for the bond. And that would take, the bond is another whole action that the
no,
voters will have to
yeah,
take.
I understand that. I'm just curious about, as Bill had alluded to, he hadn't figured out what the revenue would be.
Right.
For that stretch. I'd be interested to know what that might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to, once we move beyond this process, once we get that engineer, we have, we were able to obtain $250,000 grant for the project.
Yep.
We're looking at another potential $1 million grant for the project. So, once that starts to flesh out a little bit more, we'll know exactly, what we would have to bond. You know.
Speaking of the grant, I want to give a shout out to Bill for that, because
Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
big one. That
Yep.
was one that we applied for, and we sort of said, well, there's a real small chance that we'll get it, but we got it, and that's to
Yeah.
your
That's
credit,
great.
Bill.
We
That's
actually got
great.
2 of them, one Thomaston too. So the Knox County area was pretty fortunate.
And I think the real revenue from this, the long-term revenue, is gonna be if we get development down there.
Yeah,
That's what will
absolutely.
really feed the revenue, and the debt service charges and capital maintenance fees are really kind of pennies when it amounts to.
Is everybody going to be here on the 27th, or for the special town meeting?
I will be here. Doesn't, we don't actually
No,
have
no, I'm
citizens.
just, yeah,
Right.
well, no,
Yeah.
that's,
Well, we have 2 motions. Does someone want to take a look in? Yeah.
Remember that the motion for the special town meeting has to be at 7:30.
7:30, right,
7 p.m.
okay.
Yeah, well, to at least get the discussion going, I'll move to hold a special town meeting on Monday, August 27th, 2018, in the Parker Community Room at the Rockport Opera House, immediately following the public hearing.
You see, that's what that has to change, because it has to be
Okay.
for
Why
a
don't you
time
do this
specific.
motion first, the public hearing?
You hold the public hearing.
Okay. I didn't realize we were on that agenda. Okay. I'll move to hold a public hearing on Monday, August 27th, 2018, in the Jeffrey Parker Community Room at the Rockport Opera House, beginning at 7 PM, to consider an amendment to the Municipal Tax Increment Financing District known as the Commercial Street Municipal Development and Tax Increment Financing District, parentheses, Commercial Street TIF District, and to its development program.
second.
Okay, again, this is to hold the public hearing, and it'll start at 7 o'clock.
Until it's written by a lawyer.
Until, is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? 4 to nothing. Okay, now we need the motion to have the actual special town meeting, and this is the one that would start at 7:30
So I'll move to hold a
following.
special town meeting on Monday, August 27th, 2018, in the Parker Community Room at the Rockport Opera House at 7:30 PM to consider an amendment to the Municipal Tax Increment Financing District known as the Commercial Street Municipal Development and Tax Increment Financing District, parentheses, Commercial Street TIF District, and to its development program, and to approve the warrant for the special town meeting.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion at this point? All in
We
favor?
do have the,
Yes,
we do have the
sorry.
warrant, right?
Yeah, Linda's got the warrant here. She did it both
Yeah,
ways.
we have to sign
The
it.
one article on the warrant. That's all, I just want to make sure that we're, since we're approving a warrant, I want to make sure, that's the right thing. Okay.
Yep. Okay, all in favor? Unanimous. All right, in our packet here, we have the proposed ordinance to ban polystyrene takeout food containers in Rockport. For people that might be new to the board, this came up as an issue earlier this spring when we had a senior at the high school bring a proposed ordinance change to us. It was favorably received at that time. Since then, it's gone to the town attorney, who redlined it and made a few suggested changes. You have both the original and the changes here in our packet. And what I would like to come out of this discussion tonight is, when we look at this, I would also like to add this on to the public hearing that we have on August 27th as another item to be discussed prior to acceptance. So do we have any comment? The student was Frances Woodworth.
She's here tonight.
Yep, she's there, say hi. So, anybody here have any comments about this portion of it? This is for takeout materials and,
I think it's particularly good that we're having the public hearing on it, and that evening is all about also having the business owners here too, so it will be.
no, that's a different one. This was.
It's on the
it's on
30th.
the-
Oh, that's right,
TIF.
that's on the 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on the 30th, sorry, yes. Okay, August 27th, yes.
Well, I think this ordinance as presented and originally by Fran, she did a lot of work on this and going
Yeah.
out and talking to the
Yeah,
businesses.
clearly.
She made an excellent presentation to the board at the time. And I think the board was very strong on the concept at the time, and now we've gotten the lawyers to look at it and hopefully not screw it up too much. So I'm in favor of this. It seems like an easy thing to do, and that most of the businesses are on board with doing it anyway. And I think what you, familiar with the Keep Rockport Beautiful, that's a lot of what they pick up. Is the, and the problem with it is it breaks apart and then the little pieces get out of there. The plastic bottle's easy to pick up in one piece, but this stuff breaks up and makes a mess, so I fully support this ordinance
And
going forward.
Francis did a lot of work, I think, in comparing what the, was that your work in comparing the alternatives, the cost of the alternatives to the polystyrene, the chart that had? But it was great. It was.
Well, she
it was
gathered it
great
all
what you-
together and made
Right,
an excellent
exactly.
presentation.
I think it's a great idea. It's just a shame we have to legislate it, you know? It's the,
Well, that's what we're here for.
no, but I mean, it should be just a good common sense thing to do without nudging them that hard.
Don't forget, the problem that we identified was litter.
Okay, let's continue the discussion up here. So, do we want to make the motion that's in our packet?
Yes. I move to hold a public hearing on the proposed ban on polystyrene takeout food containers to be held on August 27th at a meeting of the Select Board at the Jeffrey Parker Community Room at the conclusion of the public hearing and special town meeting scheduled on that night.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion?
And this would eventually go on to the ballot in November?
It'll be a secret ballot, right?
Okay, and would we place that on the ballot tonight or after that public
You can
hearing?
do either.
We could do either. I was going to wait till after the public hearing. It
Makes
just
sense,
sort
I
of
think,
made
just in
sense.
case somebody comes up
Right.
and.
Yeah, because there's a small window, I think, between then and the 7th of September, or whatever the deadline is.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we can do it that night.
Yeah.
You can do it that
I mean, I
night.
think we
Well, that's
can,
true,
you know,
yeah.
we can, if it's a public hearing, and if we don't get any wildly negative comments, then I would say we should just vote to get it on the ballot and get
I
it off
agree.
our plates.
Yeah.
Yep.
As part of the special town meeting?
No, as part of the
No,
public hearing.
after the public
the
hearing.
public
you know,
hearing,
we'll have to-
okay.
well, that means we have to have a regular select board meeting so we can
Right.
vote on it, but I think it's
Okay.
worth doing. You know,
All right.
take the action right then.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor? It's 4-0, it's unanimous. Good luck, Fran, thank you very much.
Thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Really good.
All right, now, this next item here, I've been getting some mixed messages on. Consideration of a possible ordinance that would ban unencapsulated polystyrene floats in the docks and coastal waters, harbors, rivers, lakes, and ponds in Rockport. In your packet, you have, basically, I believe it's Camden's ordinance that they have. Rockport Marine wrote a letter to comment on this, Sam Taylor. And I saw Kim Kimball today riding her bike, and she told me that she didn't think this was ready yet for prime time. So my question is, do we want to sort of get into it tonight, or would we like to have this be a little more baked by the town attorney and reviewed and everything? So we'll do what the select board wants to do. Our attorney has not seen this, hasn't commented on it, not just at the moment.
I would, I think that we need some more understanding of, or contemplation of the Rockport Marine concerns. And secondly, I have some concerns about the fines as the town attorney has drafted them. I don't think that
Well, the
it's-
town attorney has not done.
I'm
These
sorry,
are
whoever,
Camden's.
Camden,
All
as
Camden's.
Camden has drafted them then. And I think that we need to take a look at that because it doesn't make any sense to me. It's just not logically sensible, the
Okay.
way I'm reading the fine.
Mark, any thoughts?
I think it should be looked over, but I would love to have it go on if possible, just for the fact, I mean, we're trying to do other things with styrofoam and straws. And
Yeah.
this is just another avenue of preventing debris from being in the water.
I guess the question I might have is if we vote to hold a public hearing on it on whatever the date is, the 27th, would we be able to get more information by then so that the board could feel more comfortable with it? Because I agree with Deb that this, I feel like I just saw this for the first time.
Yeah.
I need more education on it. I think the discussion is certainly worth having. I mean, we don't
Yes,
want
I
this
agree.
junk floating around in
Right.
the water and
And I
things
don't
like that.
disagree with it. I'm saying that I would love to have it go forward, but I think it needs to be looked at.
Okay.
So
if
that's
it's
why I asked the
possible.
question, is in the next 2 weeks, basically, until we have this special town meeting and public hearing, right? I think it's 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah,
Is that enough time to gather some more information so that we could have a discussion
Well, I
about
can-
it and maybe hear from the public on that night and then decide at that point whether or not to put it on in November or perhaps push till next June?
You'll need to decide pretty much then, as Mark pointed out, there's not much time after that public hearing date in order
Right.
to make the
But the
deadline.
public hearing could be informative, I guess is my point.
Yeah,
You've only got 11 days to,
You're saying it could be informative, but we don't necessarily have to make a
I mean,
decision that
at the
night.
end of the day, if we have the public hearing and we hear from the public that there's a lot of disparate views on this, then we could say, well, we need more time, and so we're not gonna put it on in November.
Right.
If we hear from the public that there's a lot of strong support for it, and that everybody can figure out how to work with it, then maybe we could move forward. Although I suppose the other thing too is that we haven't really looked at the ordinance and modifying it for Rockport either. So I think there's still some work to do.
I think it's just trying to rush it through too quickly. You know, Rockport Marine went to the trouble of, writing a letter and making comments, and,
has anybody else that's been aware of it, do you know?
well, I don't know, I think this is the first time it's showing up here on an agenda item for us, so.
Oh, I don't know. I just figured if they knew about it, then maybe other people did, and they might have said something.
Well, Sam is here. We could
I'm
ask him.
concerned that you can talk about cups and clamshell containers and stuff. Rockport Marine is talking about a significant amount of money. And I'd like to know, for example, what kind of sort of an aging schedule. I mean, Rockport Marine says, we have X number of floats
15
that we
years.
own. And then we've done X number of floats for customers. And they have a life of whatever it was, 20 years or something. And I mean, did they do those floats 10 years ago, or did they just do the floats? I mean, there's a lot of information I think that we would benefit from.
What I would prefer personally is I'd like to see the lawyer take a look over this and then have it come back to this group and discuss it and get the input at that time. And then after we've been through all of that, decide what the best thing to do with it is, how to move it forward. I mean, it puts it off, and Marcy obviously wouldn't be happy. But again, I just feel like this is a little bit half-baked for us to rush it through.
I agree.
one thing I would recommend, though, Deb, if you've got questions and comments.
Yep.
That will help the lawyer, let's get those worked out. ahead.
Definitely,
And
okay.
before I send it off to the lawyer,
Yep, I'll explain to you my concern on this fine language, the way it's done.
I mean, with the polystyrene, the takeout container work, Fran did a lot of work, a lot of legwork getting us to the point where it could get to the board, that it had been, a lot of work had been done in the background. This one, I think it's worth considering, but like you said, there's a lot of questions that need to be gone through and answered. We could start to move that process forward, but whether we can get it done for the November, it seems unlikely. It seems like it would be something for a June.
One thought, in the letter from Rockport Marine, they talked about, they had given input to the Conservation Commission. I wonder if the Conservation Commission and the folks from Rockport Marine maybe could have a little more discussion about that and maybe figure out how to make it work for both entities together. I think that might be a.
Planning on meeting with them at the Harbor Committee meeting, which is next week.
Yeah, that was my next point. was
Right.
Okay.
The Harbor Committee should be.
Well, again, I don't want to hash this out right now in this meeting. Can we just agree to put it off and let everybody do their homework a little bit better?
Yeah, I would say that I
Yes.
would like to see a recommendation from both the Harbor Committee and the Conservation Commission about the best way to move forward with this.
All right. Okay.
Do you want to let anybody make comment on this? There's some people in the audience who are
No, not really. You know, because I think it'll just prolong it, so, you know, when the time comes, everybody will have a chance.
I mean, it might be nice just to ask if they understand why we're doing it rather than just letting something fester perhaps, but.
Okay?
Which way?
All right, that,
okay saying something or not?
no, just bring it back to us after everybody's had a chance to look it
Actually, I mean, those
over and
people,
the
these
like.
folks,
It was sent to the harbor committee,
these-
it's passed back to us, and then now it's just been playing ping pong,
Yeah.
which is totally fine, and we will
Yeah.
just roll with whatever you guys decide tonight, but the same thing happened with the polystyrene takeout ban was supposed to be on June, and it was just,
Yeah.
so I guess I'm used to this, it's taking much longer.
If you wait for government to do something for you, you'll have to wait a long time.
Right, and it's just that we have a public hearing coming up, and I feel like it's one of those things that the public needs to be discussing this as part of the conversation.
Yep.
So it'd be
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to move on. Review the bond language for the proposed Rockport Library. This is also in your packet here. And I'm going to ask Rick to lead this because he really, I think, is the most familiar with it.
As you're aware, you know, we've got a bond that's moving forward with the library. And there's two pieces to it. There's the normal bond, which would be the bond for the construction of the library. And that bond language, actually, if you go to the articles, it's actually the second article that's listed in the packet. And that's the normal bond language that allows the town to borrow money to build the library. And it's written by our lawyer, which she is working on some alternative language that gives, in the initial paragraph, gives some more layman's terms of what this does. The more confusing piece is the article, the second article, which is basically an article that allows this, because what's going to happen is there's going to be a little bit of lag time with donations coming in to fund the project of the library. So the second article, the second authorization would be to allow the town and the select board to borrow money in anticipation of those donations coming in that are committed, that we have legal documents for pledge documents. And that was one of the things that we talked about, I think you were at that meeting, Ken, correct? Yeah, you and Doug were at that meeting, is how do we bridge the gap between when we have enough cash to build the building? You know, we'll have the $1.5 million up front, and then we have donations coming in, and some of those donations will come in this year, in this fiscal year, and then there'll be potentially 3 years of donations. So some of them will be in this fiscal year, some will be in the next fiscal year, and it will leave the donations that come in the third fiscal year will leave us short of being able to start construction. So it delays the whole project by about a year. When we delay the project by about a year, the inflation factor will chew up any gains that we get in any additional costs in borrowing this money. So there's two parts to this bond language that's been developed by town council, and bond council, I should say. And so basically, this is, the draft language is here, but what you need to do is actually
Have the public
have the
hearing.
public hearing on those two articles and schedule a public hearing on the 27th. And this is also an opportunity for you, if you have any concerns about the bond language, to voice those, so that I can get those to town council.
All right, so did everybody understand that? We have the bond language in our paperwork. One is for the 1.5 million, and then the other is basically just a bridge-type loan.
Amount unknown, and when we had the discussion, depending on cash flow issues, we may not need that, but we want to have the capability to use it if we need it. Because one of the things that, when we had the discussion with the lawyer and with Megan, that when we draw that $1.5 million bond, that will actually earn some interest for a while before it's spent. And so that may help with the cash flow crunch a little bit as well.
Well, there may not be a crunch, but it's hard to tell.
It's, but it helps us too, because part of the 1.5 million includes, the language includes the select board making a finding that we're gonna get the donated money that we have. So that'll
Right.
require a report from the private foundation that's raising the money to tell us, okay, we've got pledges for this much money, and we're gonna have this much cash on hand, and then we have, as a board, have to decide, okay, it's prudent from the point of view of the town to go ahead with this and to pull the trigger on the $1.5 million bond and start the construction process.
And is the total that is now on hand in the neighborhood of 600,000? Or pledged?
I haven't heard
That's the number
a
I heard you
specific
guys.
number.
It's a
That's
little
the-
higher than that.
That's the number
Yeah.
I mean, what's a little higher, 601?
Well,
or-
actually, no one's told me. I just,
So we're
specific-
we're off to a
When the
good start.
silent-
Yeah, we're off to a good
Right.
start. I haven't heard specific numbers, and they've been, they haven't given us, dollar and cent numbers or anything like that at this point. But I think from what I've heard from the folks who are doing the fundraising on the private foundation is that they're very pleased with how things are going so far. They've had a really good response.
And they're ahead of where they expected to be at
Ahead of where they
this point.
expected to be. They expect if the vote is passed, if these articles pass in November, they expect that then they will get another surge of donations, and so they feel pretty good about it. But because of the nature of the way they're asking for the pledges, they're asking for people to pledge over as much as a 3-year period. And so that may mean that some of the pledged money won't come in until a little bit later, which is the reason for the Bridge Loan Authority.
Because of the way the process will play out, we'll have the money, once you pull the trigger to start, you'll have the 1.5 million and whatever donations are in hand, and you'll have enough cash flow. It'll be just at the tail end of the project where there could be a cash flow potential. And once we get going, we'll be able to predict that out much better. But we won't know that by November.
So we may not need to use this bridge gap, is that right?
We may not.
It depends on how the
And-
private fundraising goes.
And I'm assuming then that before the bridge gap is used, the board will know about it and approve
Oh,
that?
yeah,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, no, I just wanna
You'll have
have
to
that.
take a vote.
I just I don't want to have any,
Yeah, you'll have to take a vote to do
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
You'll have to make a finding. You'll have to take
and
it.
it will be a one-time thing, or can it be more than one time, depending on how much you need as we go?
I see it as a one-time amount that, you'll get and we'll use whatever we have to use, but no.
Well, the language allows us to do it more than once. It says to
And that's
issue
what-
at one time or from time to time.
Well, and I don't want to go asking for 500,000 and only need 3, and then what do you do with the other one? Buy new chairs, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather do it as we need it, rather than
Right.
asking for a lot at once.
And this gives us the authority to do
Yep.
that.
And, look, this is all predicated on a positive vote in November. But again, talking to people around town, people do seem to be quite upbeat about the design that's out there. I know that our capital campaign committee has been very upbeat, and the people they talk to have been very anxious to be part of this project. So, knock on wood, things do seem to be moving ahead, and I think we can get this built, so. So there's 2 motions here. Do we have a,
So I will move to hold a public hearing on the proposed library construction bond to be held on August 27th at a meeting of the Select Board at the Jeffrey C. Parker Community Room at the conclusion of the public hearing and special town meeting scheduled on that night.
Second.
any further discussion?
I mean, I assume people know August 27th of this year, but
Right, August 27, 2018.
2018, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what I said.
no.
Linda
Yeah.
wrote it down.
Yeah,
All right, all in favor? Vote is unanimous.
And I move to hold a public hearing on the proposed general obligation bond to be held on August 27th, 2018, at a meeting of the Select Board at the Jeffrey C. Parker Community Room at the conclusion of the public hearing and special town meeting scheduled on that night.
Second.
Any further discussion about that? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Now, we need to discuss and vote on a pathways reserve in the amount of $26,000, $999.12. So I'm going to let Rick also take the lead on this. This is, and Ken, you'll probably want to chip in. This has been going on for a while.
909, not 999.
Well,
900,
We'll get it right.
$26,909.12.
we'll get it right in the motion.
Yeah, this project has been going on pretty much the whole time I've been here. I think it started before I came. Lenny and Jeff would know better than I, and the grant came in right about four and a half years ago?
2012.
In 2012. The grant came in 2012? So it started before I was here. So it's been in the process for many years. And we've been moving forward with it. The plan has been to bring the sidewalk from Quarry Hill down to where Loyal Biscuit is, where it used to be
Leonard's.
Leonard's.
Leonard's used to be the seafood.
Yeah, to create safe passage for people walking, particularly to Hannaford's and then beyond and to the bus terminal, and then further down the road. In conversations with Helen today, I didn't realize that the changes that have driven it seemed to me that the cost had started out at around $300,000, now we're up to what, $682,000? But a lot of the reason for that increase in price is in changes that have been driven by making it a better than simply a piece of asphalt along the side of the road that's we call a sidewalk. And so that's what's moving forward. We've been putting money away for the past, that I know we've been putting away since I've been here. We have in there now, there's a little confusion on some people's part, but not on ours. We have $29,000 in the account now. And we're depositing another $8,000 into that account this year. The request is to withdraw $26,909 from that Pathways account to pay Camden for our portion of the required payment to DOT, which will leave us with a slight balance, but we're gonna deposit another $8,000, and then next year we will have to budget an additional payment into the reserve for the overage and whatever, who knows, with the way things get bid today, it might come in higher than 282. We have no way of knowing. But that amount of money, we'll know that amount of money going into the budget process, I believe. They're bidding it out soon?
Out to bid now.
Yeah, it's out to bid now?
They're requesting it.
Yeah, so we'll know what that amount of money is going into our bidding, budget process, so then we can just budget the final payment in our budget process.
Okay.
Is there any encumbrance opportunities from stuff from the highway this year that we could hold over, or possibly for next year, so that we don't have to?
We'll be looking at encumbrances for paving, there are paving,
I'm just trying to find, if we have money that we're going to encumber or throw back into the UFB,
right.
is there an opportunity to use that rather than raising it in taxes
Yeah, this-
next year?
We could, with any encumbrance, with this board, could vote to put it into that reserve account. I would
Right.
I mean, I would rather do that than raise 13 more thousand next year.
Yeah, we could do it,
That,
depending on what they
if
are.
that's what
Yeah.
your pleasure is, we can look at
Do
that and just
Just
encumber
a
that.
thought.
And I just want to add a little more history, if I can, about the project. This is part of the Pathways Master Plan, which this board has approved on a couple of occasions, and it's, the master plan is a little bit of a wish list, but been thoroughly vetted by the Pathways Committee, which is a two-town committee. And part of that is to eventually to have a pathway all along Route 1, all the way down here to at least Main Street to connect the town office,
the
and
next
hopefully up to Route 90 to connect with a pathway there as well. And so this is a piece of that. It's a small piece, granted, but it's a piece. One of the things the Pathways Committee has done over the years is to be very opportunistic when these grant opportunities come along. And this one was kind of an interesting one because the grant was so long ago, and the grant application was well-written by people in Camden who aren't there anymore, I think, and it was approved. And the nice thing about it is that the project was approved with an 80% match from the Maine DOT. Now, that 80% match wasn't tied to the original amount. That 80% match has continued to grow as the project cost has grown. So for us, it's a pretty darn good deal.
Yep.
And I have to say, too, each of you have probably seen the same thing. Drive my car along there past Hannaford, especially in the middle of the winter, and seeing some poor guy lugging a suitcase up on the side of the road. It's dangerous. And I think we want to help welcome people to the area. So I think this project has a lot of good things going for it, not the least of which is improving our infrastructure for 20 cents on the dollar.
Along those same lines, before I forget about it, the pedestrian signal at 90 and 1, is that operational?
Oh, yeah.
So it works, I mean,
Yep.
but there
And
are
people
no,
actually use it.
well, that's what made me think, this is the first time I'd seen somebody over there the other day pressing the button. I was just wondering.
And this
whether-
Yeah.
project will include, if I'm right, will include a pedestrian signal at Hannaford also, so
Yeah.
people will be able to cross the street there.
It certainly,
Come on up.
Ken has explained the history and Rick has. So I suspect this is something that'll go forward. I'm a little bit more of a McScrooge on some of these things. One concern that I always have about a project such as this is future maintenance costs. I've never heard that addressed very well. And the reason I think about that is when I look at the sidewalks around the town of Rockport, Rockville Road, Lime Rock Street, Mechanic Street, that you can hardly even call them sidewalks. So here we're spending a lot of money on new infrastructure, and a lot of our pathways are falling into disrepair, and we can't afford to repair them. So I don't expect to spend a lot of time on that, but I just wanted to sort of get my
Well,
2 cents worth.
And I agree, because, if it's there so people aren't in the road, what are you gonna do in the wintertime? How much more are we gonna pay Camden to do our streets, and should we consider doing our own?
Well, the long-term maintenance on these projects can be formidable, and I've never seen any provisions for it. It's always, putting in something new and shiny. And then after it's done, you kind of move on to the next project. But,
Paul, move to approve the withdrawal of $26,909.12 from the Pathways Reserve account and to dedicate it to the invoice we have on hand for the Route 1 pathway project.
is there a second?
Yep.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, let it be so.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Just a quick comment, Jeff Scott, Pathways
Yes, sure.
Chair.
Yeah.
2 comments. One is, Mark, I'm glad you pointed out the pedestrian crossing. The opportunistic work that Ken was just talking about is why we put in that pedestrian crossing there, because there was money available to make it happen. The DOT put that crossing in, quote unquote, at no cost, but they couldn't put a crossing in up Route 1 because there's no infrastructure for them to do so. But there will be someday when we put in the final connection to that, and then we'll have a crossing up on that side of the road
Well,
too.
And it's funny, because I asked that, because I drive it every day, but I don't remember seeing a lined area where people can actually stay within and cross from one side to the other.
On Route 1,
Yeah.
No, there is. There is.
Well, I know there are
There's
stop
a
lines
crosswalk.
for.
There's
You know,
landings on both sides.
now that you mention
Landings
it-
on both sides, yes,
Yeah,
but
now that you mention it, Mark,
I don't think there is. I
There's
think
no
there's,
crosswalk?
there's landings on both sides, but there are no, there's,
you couldn't get me to swear either way.
I mean, I drive it every day, but it's like,
So,
I stop at the line where the red light line is.
Yeah. I'll
But
have
there's
to
no
look.
crosswalk.
I don't think so. I'll have to, yeah, it will all go that way.
So thank you. And thank you for the vote. I am just process-wise a little confused why the select board is voting on approving an invoice.
Because we have to withdraw the money
it
from a
comes-
reserve
It
account.
comes out of
Oh.
the reserve.
Okay.
And if it's
It's
more,
all-
if it's more than a certain amount, we have to
More
vote
than
on
two
it.
thousand dollars in Rockport, we have to vote on it. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Didn't understand that.
Okay, approval of the ambulance contract. I'm going to ask Ken and Rick to lead this discussion because they were involved with it. I see we have the crew here.
As you see in my, my notes, we thought we had this all done, and we were gonna have to come back for an amendment, and it turned out Hope was unwilling to sign the agreement the way it was, and that led Northeast Ambulance to be unwilling to sign an agreement without making the changes ahead of time. So the contract before you has the changes that Ken noticed, was the one that noticed those first up, that, some of the language in there was pretty restrictive and was gonna cause a problem. We were gonna need to fix that. I believe that has all been fixed now. While we had an opportunity, we were doing the agreement again, Butch went in and did a lot of formatting changes in the agreement to get it formatted better, and also made the changes that were needed, and enough changes to get Hope to be able to be willing to sign on to the agreement without it affecting us in any great, to any great degree. I think this pretty much covers everything that we've been talking about, that we planned on in the original contract, and gives, Camden's already signed off on it. Has Hope and Lincolnville? No, so they're meeting, they just haven't met yet. I think Lincolnville meets tonight, don't they?
Yeah, Lincolnville's meeting tonight discussing it, and Hope is meeting tomorrow.
Yep.
Ken, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, we basically sort of already approved this without these changes, and then the changes are things about the penalty fees, where it's basically the changes, the response time penalty fee is specific to town, because the response times expected for each towns are different. But the level of service is across the whole four-town area, and that's the percentage. And if they don't have the appropriate level of service responding to a call, then there's a ding against them for that. And that was the change we had to make, was to make sure that was for the whole system as a whole, not for each individual town, especially the smaller towns, because it would obligate them to some fairly sizable penalties. But otherwise, I think this contract has had a lot of work done on it over a number of months, and the change from us dictating their service levels to us saying, here's what we want, how we want you to respond, I think has been a very positive change. It's been received well, I think, by those folks. I think it's been received well by the fire chiefs that are in pretty good agreement on this, and so I'm happy with it as it stands.
Okay, thank you for your hard work on it, all of you. Do we have a motion?
Let me find it
I move to
here.
authorize the town manager to sign the contract with Northeast Ambulance Service as presented.
Second.
And now I just want to make sure I get in there that I realize we're just doing this document now, and they're supposed to have quarterly meetings. But I would like to see the quarterly be September starting, not 3 months from now.
Who's the liaison for this?
Mark and I.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, you know.
I agree. I think we need to have a meeting sooner rather than
Yep.
later.
You
Just,
know-
if nothing else, just to see, okay, how's everything going as we start out here and.
And I think, you know, and we picked those dates well enough in advance so that, you know, we don't get caught short and we don't have meetings, which is part of what happened before.
Right.
Because I believe, Butch, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you've been tracking your responses since July 1?
We have.
And so, using this new contract as a model, so they have some history now of success rate, of meeting the obligations of the contract. So that would be good to report out in September.
Yeah, so just to clarify.
You need to come up to the mic if you're going to talk.
So just to point, I would agree, and that's with your statement, Mark. We left in that this contract would still start on July 1, so even though we're already into that, we're still starting on July 1. We're technically in an extension period right now, but we're still looking at this as it started July 1. So we're tracking the data. Actually, I'm going to get reports out within the next couple of days, as this contract says we should, monthly. So the town managers will get monthly reports, and then that data will be combined together for a quarterly review, so.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Ken, thank you. We have a motion. Okay, all in favor? 4-0 unanimous. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The next item on here is we need to approve withdrawal of a substantial amount of money from our Public Works Equipment Reserve account to get the work done on the four-wheel drive Oshkosh. Included in your packet is the letter that the people up at Loring Industries spelled out what's going to be done.
I move to approve the withdrawal from the Public Works Vehicle Reserve, Vehicle Equipment Reserve in the amount of $150,000 for the purpose of a rebuild of the Oshkosh four-wheel drive plow truck.
Second.
Okay,
How much do we have in that reserve right now, Rick?
We have,
I want to say 160, but that.
yeah, it's a little over 150,
Okay.
but not much.
No,
I
because
don't think it's 160.
I think we tinkered with that last year, trying to get the number from them so we could minimize what we
Yeah.
put in.
and hopefully, well, this could take as long as 5 months, so we could be into the winter storm season by the time we get it back, but
Well, this truck has given us, what, 20 years or
20
more of
years, yeah.
service? And it was a bargain when we got it.
It was a
And
Don
hope-
Willard thing, I think, if I remember correctly.
And Steve was involved.
Yeah.
They just happened to find it someplace or whatever, and it was a deal, so,
it's only got 32,000 miles.
yeah. Well, they're very careful about how they use it. It's, because it has specific uses, and I think there's only one guy who knows how to drive it, isn't there?
I think others drive it, but know how to drive it, but I think it's,
Jimmy.
Jimmy's the one that sits in
Jimmy
that
Aldous.
seat all the time.
I'm learning though.
Hopefully, yeah, they probably have electric shocks on the thing in case you get over there and try to tinker with it. Hopefully, this will give us another long period of service, this rebuild. I don't know, is there
Well,
any,
that's the plan.
is there any cost, any estimate on what the length of the longevity of it'll be? once this
No,
work is
it's
done?
basically, they're rebuilding it like it's a
Like
new truck.
condition,
Yeah.
so.
It's already lasted 20
As
20
long as
years,
we
right?
keep them garaged and undercover.
That one always did, I think, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so, all in favor? 4-0, okay, we kind of lost our audience. Acknowledgement of gifts to the town. Jason worked hard to get a grant to buy 3 iPads for the fire trucks.
Just out of curiosity, what was the use for the iPads on the fire trucks?
They use them to, it tracks, they can go online and they can get all the information on pre-planning and also direct them to the call. The GPS, and then they can enter in all of the, start to enter in all of the data from the call in there, right at the, while they're at the scene.
No GPS on those big fire trucks, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding, those expensive fire
Now,
trucks.
I bet there's backup cameras.
Yeah, right.
There is. The new truck has backup and front
Has 4
camera.
cameras on it,
Yeah.
one in each direction, it's pretty cool.
I move to
Yeah.
accept the FM Global Fire Prevention Grant in the amount of $2,397 for the purchase of 3 iPads for the fire truck.
Second?
Further discussion? Also, say they get to a fire and they need another fire extinguisher, they can order it from Amazon.
It'll come in by drone.
Right?
Have it delivered, yeah.
All in favor?
Just
Oh,
before we
yes, one
vote,
more
I just want to comment, I thought the letter from the insurance company giving the grant was really quite complimentary of our
Yes.
department and Jason in particular, and that was
Yep.
nice to see.
Yes, and I certainly want to give Jason credit for that. We do have a thank you card here to send to the company that gave us the grant, so we can all sign that tonight, so, okay. All in favor? Or nothing?
Were you starting those around now so that we could be working on them? I don't want to.
Well, there's only one.
Oh.
Sure, go ahead. Didn't want to start it until we accepted the money, you know?
Well, actually, this
All right.
is the thank you card.
Now, we need to approve the order of municipal officers regarding payment of outstanding or delinquent property taxes. Rick assures me this is a housekeeping
Standard every year thing.
thing, so I think the motion probably,
I move to approve the order of municipal officers regarding payment of outstanding or delinquent property taxes.
Second.
any further discussion? Maybe you could just tell us briefly what that was.
It allows us, Linda, it allows us to collect the delinquent property taxes. It's just
That is correct.
it's a housekeeping thing that just says, go do this, make it so.
We can collect the oldest taxes first.
Oldest unpaid tax bill first.
So in
Okay.
other words, somebody comes in with a check for a certain amount of money, you apply it to the oldest one first and
Correct.
then work
Not-
forward. Makes
Not
sense.
a current.
All righty, so all in favor? Or nothing? Rick, you have a ballot for the Maine Municipal Association slate of officers here?
Right. And there's only 3 names on the list for the slate of officers, but in order for me to sign that, I have to have the authority from the select board to sign that ballot.
And people had a chance to look at that, and the ballot was included in our packet here. I personally do not know any of these people, so,
I know them all. Well, with the exception of Melissa Dion, I don't really know that well. Christine Landis is currently the vice president, and she'll be moving she'll be moving up to vice president, right?
Bethel.
She's since moved to Gardner, effective today, actually.
Okay.
And these, I'm vacating my position. My position was only a 2-year term, and so I'm vacating my position, and so these people are all 3-year terms. And Elaine is already on there currently, and Bill Brigio is the city manager of Augusta, and he's currently on there.
Okay, so, did we have a motion?
I move to authorize the town manager to sign the voting ballot for the next slate of officers as presented for the Maine Municipal Association.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Next item is to discuss the format of the town's current tax bill, and I put this on here. A little bit of the history on this was, going back to initially when the middle school bids were opened, and they were $5 million over what their expectations were. And there's a fair amount of discussion around town from people about that. And then at the non-voting taxpayer meeting, quite a few of the people were upset again about increasing school costs. And then finally, just this past week, of course, there was already a change order for the middle school that may end up costing another $300,000. And sort of my take-home message from all of this was, and I'll use myself as the example, before I got on this select board, I really had no concept at all of how my tax dollars were being divvied up. Sure, I got my bill, and, you know, my wife and I would pay it, and, but I really didn't understand what portion of those dollars were being allocated. And now that I understand it a little bit better, I've started to take some umbrage when citizens come to me and complain about how high their taxes are, when in reality I have very little control over a large portion of their tax bill. And this became painfully obvious to me during the last budget cycle here, when I can remember Mark and I and Ken, you know, arguing over $1,000 here, $2,000 there, really quite contentious at times. So one thing I'm going to try to do as we move, there'll be some discussion of this. As you know, the school board is independently elected. They're completely independent of this group here, and there's some people in the community that think, you know, never the two should meet. I've been asking myself philosophically, though, as, you know, an elected select board member representing people of the town here, should I at least have an opportunity to express my opinion about some of this? And I'm going to come down on the side that, yeah, I mean, I'm allowed to have an opinion, and when people talk to me about it, I can share that. So one thing I've done is a little prop that I love. And I'm going to put this up at all of our meetings here. And what this basically is that 67% of our tax dollar goes to the school. 7% goes to the county for 911 and dispatch services. And then we, as a select board, have responsibility for 26% of that. In your packet is a typical town tax bill. And if you look at it, you know, indeed, there is a breakdown on there. So, you know, we can't entirely say that people have been uninformed, but I have the sense that people really don't look very carefully at that. So what I would like to do is heighten people's awareness of the current billing distribution section on their tax bill, and what options we might have to do that. We'll talk about it in a minute here. Really, it seems to me the simplest, cheapest, and easiest way is to just make some sort of a small insert that we put in with the tax bill to sort of highlight that section there, just to sort of prompt more discussion, so.
Doug, during my department head meetings, I suggested that we had, when Rick and I were having meetings with Carrie and with Megan, it was brought up at both of those times. And I had suggested to them an insert, and of course, it costs a little more to do an insert, but I don't think, I mean, I don't know how much, but, you know, I don't think it can't be that much. One of the things that Carrie had suggested, and Rick, I think, was a breakdown with, was it dollar signs or something like that? But, you know, in my past experience, you know, I was president of some homeowners boards in Naples. We always did that. We always put in an explanation, a half a page or whatever, you know, something that's not long, that's going to be, that people are just going to throw away and not read. The more graphic it can be, the better. And it's also our opportunity to say, hey, we held the line on costs. You know, this is what we've done compared to last year. I mean, it's our opportunity to put in a couple of sentences that says, you know, this is what we've done with the budget as compared to last year, or looking at the last 3 years or 5 years, or whatever story that we want to tell. It's our opportunity to do that as well.
And I'd like, you know, part of the conversation was the highlighted percentages. And I wouldn't point out the school in a color, I wouldn't point out the county in a color. I would just take Rockport, which is, we're not leaning one way or the other as to, and just highlighting Rockport's 30 26.65% and leave the other two not highlighted, and at least they'll draw themselves to that line and look at it. And you're not picking on the school or the county. You're just saying, this is what yours is, highlighted.
Yeah, well, I think we should leave it to the staff to suggest to us, something that they think will be attention grabbing. I think the whole thing is to grab taxpayers' attention so that people like you, Doug, and me, that may not have paid attention to this in the past, that they see it.
And I mentioned to Doug, I mean, I think that, as much as early as today in Rick's office, that if there's a way that we could come up with a bill for doing the work for them to the point where we send them money, then let's send them a bill for doing the work.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of different options. Ken, I know you sort of have a little different spin on it.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at the bill we have in our packet, starting with taxpayers' notice down to the billing distribution and remittance instructions, it seems to me that that's all space that we have as a town that we could reconfigure any way we wanted to. A lot of the stuff in the taxpayers' notice is stuff we have to put in there, but I'd ask the same question, how many people actually read that stuff?
Yeah.
Some of that maybe that could be smaller, and then you could make the font size bigger for the billing distribution or something of that nature. I'm fully on board with making sure that people understand where their tax dollars are going. I don't have any problem with that at all. What I don't want to do is spend a lot of extra money to do that.
The most expensive thing would be separate mailings.
Yeah, that makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Right, but as Deb said, it's an opportunity, the envelope has room in it, we can legitimately put something else in there. The challenge is you don't want to put more stuff, too much stuff in there and they miss the bill.
Right.
Is the important part. But if we're limited on what we put in there and do it strategically and say, here's, it's only going to have 2 pages in it and we don't load it up with a bunch of other stuff, one really effective graphic that's being used a lot is just a dollar bill with it divided up and broken up in 67 cents of this bill goes to the school, 25 cents or whatever the percentage goes to the town, and whatever the other percentage is, 26.5 cents goes to the town, and out of your tax dollar, 7 cents goes to the county. And that's an effective graphic that,
Well, I think that Deb's idea is good of having a staff, between Kerry and Linda and Rick, look at this and, are there ways that we can get the information out a little better without increasing the cost of the billing, of the mailing dramatically? Because that's one thing, I don't want to spend a lot of extra money to do this, because that's money that could be spent on something else.
Dan, is there any possibility, any chance of getting this done for this tax season?
if it's simple, I think, if it's simple, we could do it.
Because we're talking
Linda-
September, or?
Yeah. What do you think, Linda?
Bills are coming out pretty soon, aren't they?
Well, he hasn't done commitment
Within the
yet.
next couple of weeks, he wants to have it ready, but, yeah, we could work on it the next couple of days if he's gonna be in.
If it's simple,
If it's a simple insert, doable?
It is.
We want to,
Well, how much,
that's
how
my
much
question.
cost is a simple insert?
Well, yeah, that's my question.
3,500 pieces of paper
yeah,
going
well,
around.
it's the labor of stuffing
Right.
the envelopes.
So, I mean, what Ken had said, if you can take the existing bill, reformat it,
Yeah.
and highlight some areas of concern, then you're not doing anything other than reformatting your bill and
Yeah.
Just presenting the information in a different way.
But that's gonna take time.
Yeah, that
That's
won't
gonna take-
happen
That's
this
not gonna
year.
happen this time.
Yeah, and this information is, what's in the taxpayer's notice piece is where you're saying but that stuff has to be there.
Well, it does have to be there, but it doesn't necessarily have to take up that much space. I'm just thinking that whole section could possibly be redesigned, and you're right, that won't be able to get done for this year, because those bills are already probably ready to go as soon as the numbers are put in, but.
And again, I wouldn't discount the value of saying, hey, we held the budget to this, we only increased the budget by this amount this year, or we didn't increase it, or, you know, a couple of sentences that
Well, you
shows
could-
what you're doing. I think that's very important.
Or even, you wouldn't even have to put the sentences in, you could just put, here's the current year's, last year's is,
Yeah, put it
you know,
graphically.
last year is 65% and 20, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like they do, and you can do that on your electric bill. You can look at your electric bill and say, well, I paid this much, well, how much did I pay last month, the same year for electricity? So you could do something like that, just have a couple of years' history on there.
The big question, I think, is one that Linda can answer more than me, is how much extra work and time is it gonna be stuffing the envelopes with?
We don't do it, they're sent out to be
Oh.
mailed.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah,
So there'd be an.
So I don't know how much they would charge to do
to
that.
put an extra,
But the other question I have is, I thought we was doing a newsletter. Why couldn't you put something in the newsletter in
Well, we could
regard
put
to
it
taxes?
everywhere,
yeah, you
know,
can put it
Right.
everywhere. The goal is to get it in here. But
Well,
when,
and they-
when we did did we do a notice on the, for the tax club in the mailing? What, we've done other notices in the
Mentions it here, but.
but
It's in the taxpayer's notice that tells about
Yeah,
the
right.
joining the tax club.
Didn't you do a provider, the
The
provider
provider,
vendor
yeah.
thing? I learned that during my meetings, that
Right,
at one
yeah.
point you
Right.
put something
So
in
we
there
did
with
that, so it would be, we can figure out how much it would
Alright.
cost.
All right, so maybe we could look into that, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Well, I think if it doesn't work this year, I
Yeah.
think we have more
Sure,
time than
yeah,
next
right,
year to do
absolutely.
something. But I think the idea of highlighting it, I think is fine. And comparing to previous years, I think is a good idea too, because that way the taxpayer can say, well, this year they're asking me for $30.27 for the town, and last year it was $30.38, or whatever the number is.
This cost me a nickel.
Multiply by 3,000, and then you can just give one of those to everybody.
All right, so I guess I need a motion now to adjourn the select board meeting.
So I move that we leave as select board, enter as wastewater commissioners.
Second.
Second.
In favor? So be it. In our packet, we have the wastewater, order of the wastewater commissioners. And again, this is pretty much housekeeping here. We do this annually.
I move to approve the order of wastewater commissioners regarding payment of outstanding or delinquent wastewater charges.
Is there a second?
Second?
In favor? Again, unanimous. I need a motion to exit wastewater commissioners.
So move.
Second?
Yep.
All in favor? Okay, now we go to liaison reports. Who wants to start?
Two, conservation, you got a little bit about already with they've been tied up doing their styrofoam cups and their float work. But they're also gonna be coming, I think, Doug, to you, and they may have already been to Rick, about having a once a year, in conjunction with their roadside cleanup, a once-a-year pickup of various things from around town, whether it's old tires people put out, couches, things that ultimately end up in ditches somewhere. I mean, other towns do it, and I think they like the idea of somehow working it in with their yearly pickup. So that might be coming to you. Oh, God, what was the other one? Nope, I'll think of it. Go ahead, Deborah, if you were.
I just want to say something briefly about the Technology Committee. And that is that, as I've said before, we're in the process of working with John Beeman to look for volunteers to reconstitute the Technology Committee. And we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, at the goal-setting workshop. But John and Rick and I have had some recent conversations with the head of Down East Broadband, Julie Jordan, who is heading that up. And that's the broadband that is coming to Callis and Baileyville. And we have confirmed with her the strategies that they used in bringing that broadband to those communities. which was done through them creating a regional utility district and not costing the taxpayers any funds whatsoever. Anyway, so there's more to come on that, but we are doing some homework behind the scenes that we'll be bringing back to the board at some appropriate point.
Along those lines, just sort of beyond the record, and Deb and I have talked about this, that, my leaning tends to be against this whole broadband concept from what went on before, and I certainly didn't follow it very carefully, but it sounds like there's been quite a few changes in the whole field and the area and what's available, and so I'm certainly going to advocate for, having the discussion again. Times change, things change, and, we'll see how it looks this time.
And I don't.
Involved?
I don't,
They've evolved, my thoughts have evolved.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I hope it's treated like the other public utility we have, that people are aware that if it does go by your house, even though you don't use it, you may be charged for it.
Maybe, maybe not.
Well, I
It
mean,
depends on what kind, it's not the same discussion that took place a couple of years ago.
Well, but I mean, if it is a public utility,
It's-
we're owning it, right?
Well, in the case of Callis and Baileyville, that's not the case, let me say.
I think there's some latitude in how it gets set
Yeah.
up.
Okay,
Let me tell you, they're doing it through a Community Reinvestment Act, in which they are getting 1.9% loans from banks. Those banks are vying, they're competing, beating down the door to say, let me be the entity that gives you this loan. And the only potential cost to taxpayers is at the end of, 20 years or 22 years, Rick? That if the loan was not paid back, then there could be a resulting cost to the taxpayers, but that's not been the track record, so.
And there's a lot of work to do. What's interesting is that in the time that has elapsed since when we started moving forward with this, several years ago, there's been a lot of changes and a lot of ideas that have been that have gone around, and a lot has changed in the past 2.5 years, 3 years. So it's worth.
When the time comes,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
Yep.
revisit.
Yep.
Sort of take home.
I haven't had very many meetings, actually. I've been going to the library design team meetings, and that's progressing nicely. We've hired the owner's rep, and I think that's going to turn out to be a really good hire, that Charlie at FI is really going to be helpful for us. And other than that, most of my committees have not met. We do need to have a cemetery meeting sometime soon.
I sent you an email either Friday or the week after.
Okay, I'll have to look at it and see the email.
There's one thing that I wanted to confirm with you. At the last meeting, the one that I was not at on July 27th, initially, FI was going to be the owner's rep, and they, up until the time of submitting bids, and they were going to be able to bid for the project. But my understanding is that that's no longer the situation, and that they will be an owner's rep, and they won't be bidding on the project. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Right.
They're
I
not
just
gonna
wanted
bid.
to make sure that we let people know that.
The other one that I thought of, before I forget again, is the Capital Improvement Committee. I sent out an email to Alan Mitchell, copied Diane and Rick, asking them to get together as early in September as possible for a workshop. And I confirmed that again with Alan when I spoke with him because of an email glitch. So that is out there.
Investment Committee has not had a meeting per se, but a question has come up, and we don't quite have an answer yet to, and this is related to the Midco Solid Waste Corporation. There apparently has been some new statutes passed in Maine that direct how taxpayer money can be invested. And they're really very strict. It's basically government bonds, corporate bonds that are, AAA and all of that. And so then the question was raised, does that new law affect the holdings that the town has in its accounts, in the investment committee? And so I think we're going to look into that. Megan's going to check that, because that may have some effect on what we need to do going forward. We may need to rebalance the portfolio. I don't know the ins and outs of that. Planning Board did not have a meeting. Keep Rockport Beautiful, we had to cancel the last meeting because people couldn't make it, but my plan at the next meeting is actually going to be to go back and revisit our mission statement. You know, Keep Rockport Beautiful, we've been sort of pushing projects and slowly getting them done, but that's really not the mission for that committee. The mission statement states pretty clearly that this committee is to act as a clearinghouse where the Harbor Committee, the Parks Committee, the Pathways Committee, the Rec Committee can come and we can kind of help pool resources and help each of these individual committees accomplish their goals. And somehow we got off path a little bit, you know, sort of trying to set up projects and do them, so we're going to revisit that. Parks Committee, I'm not on, but I just want to comment that the pathways in Mary Lake Park next door have now been redone. The Public Works Department did a fantastic job on those the two hottest, most humid days of the summer. They came in, they stripped up all the old pea stone and the fabric. We re-edged the whole thing. We put down new fabric, new pea stone, cut all the brush back off the pathway, so it really looks very nice. So kudos to the Public Works guys.
Yeah,
Well, I
if
think
I'd
you
been
got a lot-
around then, I would have come and helped, because that seemed like a good thing to do.
You did a lot of sweating, you did a lot of sweating during that period too, so.
Well, I watched a lot, so. Let's see, Midco Solid Waste Corporation, the last meeting, they sort of made the decision not to make a decision about the equal weight voting. So basically, I think things are going to just continue the way they are for the time being. And Budget Committee, which again, I'm not on, but has a organizational meeting on Wednesday where they're going to elect their chairman, vice chairman, but also I'm going to be there to talk to them a little bit about the process that last year I felt was fairly contentious. The process is spelled out quite clearly in the charter, how it has to be done, so I don't think there's a lot of maneuvering room to be done. You know, for me, the bottom line is the select board has sort of the final say on the budget. Now, you know, the budget committee can try to change our opinions and weigh their input, which we certainly value, and I'm willing to listen and to be swayed. And again, the charter says sort of it is what it is, but at any rate, they'll be having an organizational meeting early and.
Are there
Wednesday.
vacancies on the Budget Committee?
Pardon?
Are there vacancies on the
Yeah.
Budget Committee right
Yes.
now?
One, I think, isn't it?
Right, because Jan's resignation.
Yeah.
But I didn't think there was a full slate on the ballot either.
And I asked Megan today, and I'm not, because 3 people other than Doug responded to the doodle poll. And apparently other people have seen Megan personally, but we don't even know whether we're gonna have enough people
Yeah.
to have a meeting.
I know Megan has said, again, in the department meetings that I had, that it's really helpful and important if and I'm not saying that they didn't in the past, but if the select board clearly sets forth some of the goals that they would like to see at the outset. Especially, I
Typically,
think,
we give initial guidance, usually in October, November, to the town manager. In a select board meeting, we give
Right,
our initial
right.
guidance to the town manager on budget priorities.
Which I find very helpful, to give us a target to aim at, you know. I find that very helpful.
and maybe some of the more contentious issues that
Well,
were
certainly,
dealt
I
with
think
last
in
year could
terms
be
of
addressed.
employee compensation, I think we need to have a discussion about that earlier in the process.
Well,
You mean the select board compensation or the?
No,
The employee,
the
the employee compensation.
and.
Also,
and-
the select board compensation, though, became such an issue.
Yeah,
As well as
yeah.
the provider vendors.
Yeah, those were
Provider
two
agencies.
very.
Part of what I'm doing is, and I've got all 28 job descriptions, which I was only looking for the ones that were in in the budget process last year where you got the towns. And some of those we can't do anything about anyway necessarily because they're the union connected. So what I am looking for, hopefully, during our goals thing is, and I'm sort of laying the hand out now, that maybe by October-ish, you know, they'll be updated to 2018 standards, even though, I mean, we have 3 that were done in 2005, I think. And there's 2 or 3 more in 2008. And yes, the people are still here, but the jobs may have changed a little bit, so that we can get them all done in October of 18, and then every 3 years or whatever you deem, they get done again. But then I can get the committee together, or a group together, and then divvy them up, and then find 5 towns that are appropriate for the position, because not all the, you know, towns don't fit all sizes for each position, but.
Do you think you'll be able to do that in time for this budget season?
Well, I mean, I gotta have something to work with, and that's why I'm in hopes, and you know, maybe I can still talk Jan, because he expressed interest in being on it at the time, and I'd like to have one other board member. And I'm just looking for 5 people. I don't want,
Sure.
too many makes the pot
Right.
too difficult to work with, but it's if there were 5 people and each of us had 2 to go ferret out the right towns and get the wages to go along with it and then bring them back, then it makes life easier.
Okay. All righty. Executive session, none this evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
So, considering as full as the agenda is, less than 2 hours is pretty impressive.
I was gonna comment after you finish the adjournment.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor? All righty. Thank you very much, folks.